Hello. Thank you for coming. Before starting, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land upon which we are meeting, and pay respects to elders past and present. So I'm Stefan Hajkowicz from CSIRO's Data 61. I lead a small team of researchers in the Insight team. Data 61, if you don't know, it's a national digital research agency. It's a business unit inside CSIRO. We've got about 1,000 staff spread across pretty much every city and town in Australia, or large towns and cities in Australia. We do research into artificial intelligence, machine learning, informatics, predictive analytics, anything digital pretty much. We're doing the research into that. Plus, my team is really about plugging the gap between all the digital and tech research that's going on and the so what factor. What does it mean for companies, governments, people's, individuals, careers as well, as digital disruption is really changing the way we do and how we go about doing business, as well as supplying us with all these tools. So that's where I'm at. And because of all the uncertainty that lies ahead in the world of digital, we use tools of strategic foresight, like the scenario planning, megatrends analysis, which I'll show today, but to try and anticipate what the future may hold. There are many plausible futures ahead of us. If we look at something like artificial intelligence, which I do believe 90% of what we hear is hype, the 10% that isn't is enough to completely change the world as you know it. That can play out very different ways in the next 10 years. There's not just one future ahead of us in the artificial intelligence space. We need to employ techniques of scenario planning to open up multiple possible outcomes and what might happen. So we've been doing this sort of work for quite some time, where we analyse trends and patterns of change. Have done quite a few studies. We did a study that was on the future of work and how jobs will change in Australia. It was launched over there at the Opera House by Michaela Cash in 2016, February 2016. And it was a look at how digital technology would change the labour market and workforce, and has been one of our most read reports. It took a look out to 2038 at automation and robots coming and doing our jobs more and more. But we talked with the report was titled Tomorrow's Digitally Enabled Workforce. We were saying that spreadsheets didn't kill off the accounting profession. Smart accountants learned how to use them and got better jobs. The next round of blockchain, distributed ledger technology and AI will have a similar effect as well. It's about keeping ahead of the revolution that's happening. But that was one of the reports that the team did, and continues to be used and looked at a lot today. There's a lot of sort of opportunity and threat and concern in the Australian workforce about how digital technology will impact people's careers, and I think it is going to be a significant impact, and it's one of the things I'll cover today. So this field of strategic foresight I think is important. One of the studies we did early in the work was for a property company called GPT. I'm not sure if you might have heard of this. They build office towers, shopping centres, a little bit in industrial, and they engaged us back in 2012 to have a look at megatrends, and this is how I can tell you that what a megatrend is all about. Patterns of change that would be happening around this company, GPT, over the coming 20 years. And at the time, online retail was just beginning. It's really taken hold now with Amazon present in the Australian marketplace, but at the time it was a bit earlier. And it matters for this company because they basically rent office space and retail is changing hugely. We're continuing to see headlines about changes in the retail sector. So they commissioned a megatrend study where we looked at all of the trends and drivers of change that would impact this company, GPT, over the coming 20 years. Michael Cameron was CEO of GPT at the time. He's now CEO of Suncorp. And one of the megatrends I remember we called was behind the scenes. This was about every time you hit click and buy online, you trigger a background supply chain, which takes a little bit away from the floor space which he rents in the shopping centre and puts it into logistics. So the board actually, on the basis of this study, reinvested $1 billion, just a little bit over $1 billion of its asset portfolio out of existing shops and offices into a logistics business with warehouses. He bought a bunch of prime warehouses around shipping ports and airports, and got a trucking business set off and logistics, and this new dimension to the business grew incredibly well, actually, and that was, this will become a major part of what the business is about. This is a digital disruption story, and I like this story because this is about an early and strategic response to digital disruption. This is doing something before it hits, which repositions the business to take advantage of the trend. So digital disruption is really like a massive ocean wave that you can see coming, that you can either surf very well into the shore or you're going to get wiped out by it. And I think that is the reality for a lot of our careers and our economy is that we're looking at this looming wave that is coming so very quickly. The other thing is I like the quote that he gives us here, and it was in the Fin Review, I think, or it might have been the Australian newspaper, where he talks about the best way to anticipate change in your sector is to spend some time outside of it. And I think that also applies to us in careers in digital disruption. You know, something esoteric or left of field like artificial intelligence or blockchain may quickly come into the core business for your company or your career and change things very quickly. So understanding what that might look like early is important, and that's the function for our team, is that we're trying to help Australian companies and governments understand what these things do and how they can have impact. So we've done lots of studies, dozens and dozens of studies across many different fields, many different industry sectors, looking at what digital technology is doing. Our largest study at the moment is in Vietnam. Vietnam is, I'll be going there in about 3 weeks for a ministerial level briefing on what you're seeing today, actually. It's an amazing economy. It is growing at around 6% per annum. It has an average age of 30, and the Vietnamese Stock Exchange had a 46% appreciation over the past financial year, which is just a huge growth. Really incredible rate of growth. And what we are seeing too is massive inward migration to Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, as the digital economy is generating new jobs. People are leaving agricultural areas and coming and getting tech sector jobs, digital economy jobs, which is this prospect of a leapfrog of the Vietnam economy. That's, again, one of the many studies we're doing. So as we look across all of our digital studies that we're doing in so many different spaces, we're building this database of trends, which are patterns of change. A trend isn't just a background issue. It can be classified as geopolitical, economic, environment, social, technological, or legal. So we're looking right across the spectrum of change. And my hope is that in time we actually get some of our machine learning experts in Data 61 to work on this trends database so it starts becoming automated. You know, that it's scanning the environment continuously and giving us insight into what the future might hold. But at the moment we're working manually on building this database of hundreds of trends, and from these trends we have processes of bringing them together to look at what we call a megatrend. Now, the concept of a megatrend was introduced by US academic John Naisbitt in the year 1982. He published a book which became a bestseller of the same title, and it sold some 14 million copies worldwide, and it's been a concept that's been used in the tech sector, a little bit in defence and military as well, about how to explain patterns of change. The concept of a megatrend, it builds gradually and eventually expresses itself with explosive forces that puts the world in a different space, and it's where a lot of driving forces come together. So what happened to the taxi industry with Uber coming was part of a bigger technological and social transformation that was occurring. When it happened, the marketplace adjusted in only like 3 months and was completely unsalvageable. From the 3 months from when it really took off, the curves are exponential in the amount of Uber drivers and the amount of people that were using it. It was a very rapid transformation. I think that's what the world of digital will have. So the megatrend is a gradual change which at some point flips over and the world has changed, and around you and your careers there are megatrends at play as well. So we use the concept of megatrends here and a methodology to identify what they are, and everything that you'll see today is also in a report that has just gone live on the Data 61 website today, so you can get the detail and the data that sit behind this one. So these are the 6 megatrends that we identify. The top there of the dial is called intelligent machines, and this is artificial intelligence, which takes up so much of our time and effort and what we're really interested and excited about, a little bit scared about too, but interested about because it has this, it's really just getting going. We've built machines that have the ability to learn and do stuff we didn't teach them. That's what artificial intelligence is getting so much attention for, is the machine learning aspects. The machine is building its own strategy to solve a problem without human explicit guidance, and we're just at the beginning of that process. That's the real bit that has got us interested in artificial intelligence. And as we go up through levels of automation in cars, where there's levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where 5 is a fully automated vehicle. You know, there are cars on the road at 3 at the moment, and we're seeing steps progressing towards 4 and 5. To get to 5, though, we need to get to the levels of machine learning that allows the car to leave Brisbane, show up in Melbourne, and learn how to do a hook turn on its own without human intervention. It's got to be able to recognise any bizarre set of situations on the road. So the first megatrend that I'll get into is about the power of artificial intelligence and really behind that machine learning. Digital dividends is the next one. Australia and a lot of the OECD advanced economies of the world are in what we call a productivity slump. Productivity is a measure of the ratio of how much goes into the sausage factory, how much comes out, the efficiency with which we convert inputs to outputs. And it's a really important metric of long-term wealth generation. Now, we're in the grips of a productivity slump, and digital holds a promise of making everything a whole lot more efficient and effective. And I want to run through some examples of how digital technology is being applied in industry to make things work better. The next one we call data-driven. And this is about the reinvention of just about every organisation as a data science organisation. Retail of today and increasingly the future is not retail, it's data science. Banks are not banks, they're data science operations. Insurance companies, hospitals also are data science operations. Data is really driving so much decision making and what happens in an organisation. They are showing the characteristics of being data science organisations. So that megatrend is about the way data is driving everything. Burning platforms is a megatrend about the growth that we've seen of Uber, Airbnb, Alibaba, Amazon, the platform-based models that we're all now so used to interacting with. What's the next 10 years of development of these platforms? Well, there certainly is further growth, but we also merge them with distributed ledger technology, with blockchain, the algorithms that sit behind Bitcoin. Whether or not you like or dislike Bitcoin, the algorithms that sit behind it have continued to work incredibly well over the last 10 years. As it's gone through its peak, it's come back down. You know, we have a belief that there's something called the Gartner hype cycle on technology, where we see a new technology, we get very excited, it reaches a peak of hype, and then it falls down to a deflated trough and starts to potentially, in some cases, grow again with real use applications. So one of our theories on blockchain is we've seen it go through the hype cycle, it's reached the peak of its hype, it's fallen down, and this is pretty well what the Bitcoin price has done, and it is now starting on a build process where we're seeing some really meaningful applications of blockchain technology. Why does blockchain matter? It allows me to transfer value, not just information. You know, if I was back in 1980 trying to convince you the internet was going to be big, I'm now going to try and tell you there's a possibility, and I'll use scenarios here because I don't know, there's not just one future ahead of blockchain, possibility that blockchain is going to be big. Why? It's not just that I can send you information online now, I can also send trust and value without an intermediary. You know, if I use Litecoin, Ethereum or Bitcoin, I can send you money peer-to-peer without a bank in between us. That is actually quite revolutionary, and that opens up the window for smart contracting and a lot of different applications. Online burnout is our megatrend about all the challenging stuff we are confronted with in the online world. Rates of online harassment and bullying, especially for school children, have risen considerably, plus all the fake news phenomena, the difficulty of working out what's real and not, online manipulation. There's been some major challenges in front of us. We need to turn to digital to be able to solve that. There needs to be technological innovation in tools that help us work out what is real and isn't and keep us safe online. So that's the online burnout megatrend. The last one, reality bites, is going to be counter to all these other megatrends. This is where I'll argue that even though there's no unplug option, a lot of us are going to want to unplug in the future. What we're really going to be craving is the real physical human experience, and the best digital technologies will be the ones that are invisible. So let's jump into the story, but before I do, why have I presented these as a Venn diagram? So we had a family holiday in North Island, New Zealand, which is an awesome place to have a family driving holiday, except for all the curvy roads. And we bring three megatrends together in this holiday: ice cream, children, and car trip. Now, we can use strategy responses to handle two of these circles at a time. So children and car trip we can do with books and activity games. Children and ice cream, if we use serviettes, we're pretty good. And me and Catherine are all right. With car trip and ice cream, we can handle it. When we bring all three of those together, though, in our family, we've not yet identified a strategy that avoids a sticky mess, or in our case, it was ice cream flavoured vomit in my favourite hat, which was dumped at Auckland Airport prior to come back to Brisbane. Still a very good holiday, but had that aspect to it. That's the tricky part about strategy. I've shown you the Venn circles here. When you overlay them, it requires pure genius to deliver the strategy that works in all of them, but when you do, things get very good. That's the sweet spot of strategy that we're hunting for. So let me jump into now some of the trends and drivers that are in our database, and there is a report rich with all the information and facts and data points behind this if you want to have a look. So first thing around intelligent machines is how quickly they improve. The first attempt to do automated vehicles in a sort of proper race setting was in 2004 in the Mojave Desert, California. DARPA, the defense research arm of the United States military, had a competition for the cars to drive across the desert. It was a 240-kilometre course. None of them made it past 12k into that course. The next year, all but one made it. And the year after that, they were all making it and getting really good times. By 2012, 2009, Google had built its driverless car, and in 2011 it passed the Nevada state government human motor vehicle testing course so that it was able to drive. So in that short time period, it went from something that was laughable, and you wouldn't have, these cars were crashing into each other and falling off the roads, and it was quite hopeless, to something that was incredibly effective. And we do have the capability for automated driving today, which is really being refined to reach those higher levels of automation. So a key thing around artificial intelligence and automation is how quickly engineers start to solve what was previously seen as unsolvable. Another thing then is what happened with Google DeepMind. You might have heard of AlphaGo, which in 2016 won against Lee Sedol, the world's best Go player. Go is a game way more complicated than chess, and a lot of artificial intelligence researchers would have said it would have been another 10 years before we would have seen this happen, but it happened 2 years ago. In 2016, that AlphaGo won. The team that beat AlphaGo, the company is DeepMind, owned by Google. The team that built it then built an update in 2017. That updated version only got told the rules to AlphaGo, but got no historic play data. It had to learn how to play Go by playing games against itself. So it played itself lots and lots of times until it had developed its own strategies, tabula rasa, from scratch. Once they built neural networks into it, which is a technique in machine learning, and once it had finished this process of self-learning, it was pitted against AlphaGo that beat Lee Sedol, and it beat it 100 games to 0. And the really interesting thing about AlphaGo Zero is this is machine learning. The researchers in the paper in Nature say, we didn't tell it how to do this. We didn't give it any rules or structure about how to play this game. We didn't tell it about tactics. It learned them on its own. And this is happening in online gaming environments where artificial intelligence is being put in there, and the world's best human players are finding initially the artificial intelligence is hopeless, but it learns really quickly. So when they enter the room with their gun in this game environment, the artificial intelligence learns what they do and hides over the other corner to shoot them from behind. And then they know that happens, so the human player tries to out-strategize it, and it's worked out, they're going to do that, and they find it very unnerving and disconcerting. But this is the possibility of artificial intelligence in our world, is that we're just at the beginnings of it. And in science, we're going to use machine learning to solve problems in ways we didn't yet know how to do it. Machine learning is about to get unleashed into our research, and we'll have artificial intelligence building artificial intelligence. Google's DeepMind company has built systems of AI that has coded its own AI for image recognition, so that it can work out whether it's looking at a dog or a cat or a building, and it's getting really good outcomes, better than the human-coded AI that does that. So quite a fascinating space of development. The systems learn by sharing information. So when a Tesla vehicle was first tested on Australian roads, it took a photo of this as driving down the road, and this was its feedback to head office. Previously unidentified form of dog. So the systems then search out and do image analysis online or across the whole internet to find out what this thing is. Quickly we'll pick up it's a kangaroo, and then they'll build in the size, the likely weight, the speed, the trajectory, and whether or not it's okay to run it over is probably another key consideration for the Tesla vehicle. So that is how the machine learning happens to it, overlaps with human systems. Like you may have logged on to websites where you can't remember your password, and you can choose to do the capture thing, or you can look at images and you can click on images. Like it might say, choose all the images with a stop sign. You're helping driverless cars because you're training the machine on how to work out what a stop sign is, and millions of people are doing this all the time around the world continuously. That's how the machines are learning about images. Getting into human spaces, so we've been playing around with the Microsoft Azure API app, which is about emotion detection. Your face recognition in about 2014, computers became better than people. We're getting pretty close to seeing that happen for emotion detection as well. So we're using it in the office. These are two of my colleagues in the research team, that's Wen and Hien. And we did happiness, and we came out with 100%. So we were able to do happy. We tried surprise. Only Hien got surprised. Me and Wen just turned out happy. So we think that possibly it wasn't working because we were obviously, probably more likely, it knew we were faking it. In fact, when we did SAD as well, it was a bit, I won't show you the pictures, it was pretty terrible. We did SAD as well, and none of us could get it to register SAD. We figured to actually make it do SAD, we needed to find someone in the office, make them actually SAD, and then photograph them, and then it would work, because otherwise, it knew what SAD looked like and didn't look like. So, yeah, I think we will be moving into a world where the machine has capabilities where it didn't previously. This is another interesting example, comes from London in 2018, a computer program called Case Cruncher. A piece of artificial intelligence that was developed to predict the outcomes of legal cases, and there were some 775 legal cases that were real ones that were decided upon by the United Kingdom Financial Ombudsman, and the Case Cruncher algorithm was pitted against 100 real human lawyers from the top firms in London to see how it would go and how they would go at predicting what the actual outcomes of those were. Case Cruncher got 87% accuracy. The human lawyers were down at 63% accuracy in predicting outcomes. It really does introduce this interesting question. And I know from a conference I was at last year where the Financial Ombudsman of the UK was presenting, they said they're going to start to use these systems for a large number of financial cases. So this is when someone complains about the bank and the bank needs to put its point of view forward, so does the complainant, and then it's resolved. They're going to automate a lot of that because a lot of it they think is highly automatable. So it's an interesting thought that artificial intelligence will start to be making legally binding judgments in the courtroom. And initially we might be horrified by that. But if you're in the right, and if you've got the data to back it up, it might be a very good thing too. It might be, or if you're a marginalised community and likely to be stereotyped or not given fair treatment, AI might actually be a really good option. So when we look at it, it's worth thinking about how the ethics of AI play out. Huge interest around jobs and the impact on the workforce. This is Michael Osborne, a University of Oxford academic. He published in 2013 this confrontational study of 47% of all jobs in the he looked at 702 unique job types in America, came up with 47% being done by a robot or a computer. And this is what led to a whole lot of concern, and that we can see happening actually, artificial intelligence creeping into people's jobs. It was actually looked at again 2018 this year by the OECD, where they reviewed studies right across all of the OECD countries, and they came up with 48% significantly impacted. It's worth pointing out this is not an unemployment rate, this is just jobs that are impacted, but somewhere in there, the OECD say 14% of jobs disappear, and another 36%, taking it to 48% in total, are significantly impacted. But this will happen to the Australian workforce. For current and future generations of workers, huge impacts go on. So what jobs do we get to do? Poor Brett here gives us a bit of insight into what humans get to do. So Brett is the Berkeley robot for the elimination of tedious tasks, and a team from UC Berkeley had been training Brett via making improvements over a period of 7 years to pick up a towel in front of him, and then he had to fold it, put it on the table. And after 7 years worth of effort of training Brett, the best time they got was 20 minutes. So that shows us this is termed Morovac's paradox. We can build artificial intelligence. Any human can beat Brett, right, except for a teenager who walks over the towel every time. We build artificial intelligence that can do things like fly a plane, beat you at world-class chess or the game Go, things that you would find quite hard. We are decades off, and there's no technological pathway to building a piece of AI that will tie up your shoelaces. And that's because of the irregularity of the problem, which requires human judgment. And a towel on the floor is easy for us to resolve, but very hard for a piece of robotics to resolve. Where are the corners, where are the folds, how does it pick it up and put it away neatly? It struggles very much with that. Now, it's not to say that all we get to do is fold towels in this future. It's a bit more complicated, but this is our view on the future of work and jobs. And as you think about your careers and what you would tell your children about what they need to know for their careers, I think this gives us insight. Bifurcation of labour markets, it's likely to happen in Australia. So we looked at the photography industry here, but we did this across lots of different industries, and we picked two job types. One is routine, repetitive, rules-based and quite structured and amenable to automation. The other one involves complexity and judgment. So field photographers are the top green line there. They have to have the ability to handle complexity, they have to have judgment, they have to have emotional intelligence. Wedding photographers need a lot of emotional intelligence to get through a day, whereas laboratory staff are solving fairly well-structured, routine and rules-based jobs. Now, the red line has almost disappeared in Australia and is likely to. When we order print film today, hardly a human is involved in the process. It is done by, we upload the image, a machinery will create the print, and it will be sent to us. Whereas the other line, that has expanded. Now, my brother-in-law is a photographer. He does construction site photography, and he has a drone, which it's an awesome drone. He chucks it out the window at Stratty and it flies down to look at the beach to see what the surf is like and beams back pictures, and then it flies back with object avoidance and detection, and it can handle all sorts of weather conditions. This is a digitally enabled job, right? He's not threatened by the drone. The drone has made him way more useful. So if a resort is selling itself online, he can get heaps of photos from every angle and do a much better job, which means he can justify a higher pay packet from the resort that's selling itself. So this is a digitally enabled job that's boosted. Andrew McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson are two scientists from MIT who have worked a lot in this area, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They tell us better to race with the machine than against it. If what you're doing looks exactly like what it does, you're in trouble. But if what you're doing is supported and pushed along and helped by all this powerful digital technology, that's fantastic. It also means we need the ability to interact with that technology, which means we need to uplift coding skills in Australia. Not all states and territories have coding as a compulsory part of the curriculum, but it needs to be there because this is the language and mechanism via which we interact with digital. Digital dividends. That graph there really is showing us what is happening to productivity, which if we put a line through it, it's fairly flat. Okay, productivity should be something that we want to grow. This is what Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winning economist, tells us. It matters in the short term. In the long term, this is everything for wealth generation. Digital can help. So the Sydney Harbour Bridge out there has 2,400 sensors on it that Data61 put there. Why is that useful for it? It helps predict where there are going to be fractures before the fracture occurs, which allows the maintenance to be done a lot more quickly, cheaply and effectively. It improves the safety of the bridge, but it also takes costs right down. We're doing similar things with water pipes, but a huge amount of infrastructure out there can be done. So I want to show you examples of how digital will help us do what we do, but at much lower cost across the economy. Another one, this is Stefan Hajkowicz from Data61 out at Pullenvale in Brisbane, has built this awesome drone with a camera attached to it, which can fly in GPS-denied environments, so underground as well, and it maps a structure, any physical structure. And I think this one is transformative because it gets used within building information modelling, all the information surrounding built physical structures that the Australian Productivity Commission had a look at and said if we use this information properly, we will save 20 to 30% of cost overruns in construction. And construction's one of the biggest industries in Australia. That puts percentage points onto our GDP if we really were able to achieve that. But this information, this digital information, gives people really quick and accurate insights to any physical built structure. It's used by the emergency services if they need to fly it into a building to map it out before coming in if it's on fire, or it can be used by construction crews on any piece of infrastructure, and that's it going down an underground mine slope to be able to map it out really quickly. These digital technologies will improve the efficiency of our industry. Digital will also open up new connections. There is a revolution going on in agriculture and food with a whole lot of our work has looked at the growth of food consumption in the Asia-Pacific region and boutique markets. This is a cargo flight taking off out of Toowoomba going into Hong Kong. With high-value Aussie agricultural product on it. It has to be high value to justify that plane trip. But key to making this market work, and there is an enormous marketplace out there that transforms the regional economy of Toowoomba here. To make it work, we need digital connectivity as well. We need to be able to swipe, the Shanghai customer swipes the iPhone over the tomatoes and they come up and they see a picture of the farm and maybe talk to the farmer because provenance really matters for these markets. The new sort of boutique and specialised higher wealth markets of Asia, provenance is really important, that we want to be able to assure it happens, so it opens that opportunity up too. Teleworking is another thing that makes things more efficient. We're seeing a big growth in teleworking in Australia. 30% of all employed persons in Australia regularly work from home in their main job 2015, and it continues to grow. The data we have, we have better ways of working online. This is a haptic workbench developed by CSIRO that allows surgery to be performed remotely from one place to another. That's another one. The Microsoft HoloLens, I think, shows again the possibilities of remote teleworking with dad, who's a plumber, helping daughter fix a pipe in another part of the country. So it does hold a prospect that we can work remotely. We still don't seem to be doing this. Sydney is leading Australia in terms of commuter pain, and we seem to take on more commuter pain. There are options for teleworking to take away a lot of that commuter pain and make our cities work more efficiently. You know, we can either upgrade the roads to Rouse Hill, where there's 180,000 people living, half of whom commute into Sydney every day, or we can build co-working centres in there that respond to their needs, because most of them are knowledge workers as well. So huge opportunities to reduce costs and do more with less in the Australian economy via digital technology, and that's just starting. Data-driven is the next one. Massive growth in big data and informatics is happening in just about every industry sector. You know, a recent report shows us the growth in revenues in big data analytics, and as we can talk about some jobs disappearing in a digital technology environment, some are growing very rapidly. You know, whoever thought of being a data scientist when they were at school? Probably not many, but it is a huge, rapid growth area with incredibly good salaries and will be for some time to come. The world has a massive shortage of machine learners and data scientists, which is an incredible amount of opportunity for people. Connectivity will matter in this data-enabled world. This graph here shows us a relationship between income, GDP per capita, and the percentage of households with broadband fast internet connections, and we can see there a pretty strong relationship. Basically, this is OECD data, and it's getting studied more and more. There have been final level studies in Sweden actually that show us the relationship, but I believe if we want jobs and economic development to happen in regional Australia, one of the most important things we've got to solve is giving them fast, reliable internet access, because that is associated with the ability to grow economic activity. And we know we do have some challenges. That's the complaints by Australians about broadband connections to the Telecommunications Ombudsman, which have really shot up. But a lot of Australians, in some parts of Australia, we can find really bad connectivity, which is hampering economic growth. Another aspect of data and the use of data inside organisations is it combats cognitive bias that we have. So when we make decisions, we're subject to all sorts of forms of cognitive bias. Human beings don't think about risk very well. It doesn't make sense to insure your car and buy a lottery ticket in the same day. That's illogical, but we do that sort of thing all the time. Other sources of bias are well known and established. Psychologists have identified about 100. Data and analytics create an opportunity to help manage some of the bias of human decision making and make better choices. Burning platforms is our megatrend about platform economics. Alibaba, Amazon, Uber, and how transformative they've been. I would argue that the theory of the firm developed by Ronald Coase, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, is going to be challenged in the world of platform economics. So the theory of the firm was really about why did we get big companies last century and they became the dominant way of organising economic activity, and it had two tenets. One was transaction costs. The company can have all of its staff together working to similar systems and patterns that it can really take down the transaction costs associated that would otherwise be out there in the economy if we had to get a whole lot of random people together to do something. The other bit is asymmetries of information. The company could control what information it held onto and how it strategically released that into the outside world. And for these two reasons, companies became the dominant way of organising economic activity in every Western economy. We can see that having happened. But platform economics takes that away. Platform economics takes away the transaction costs. All of a sudden, we can enter into microtransactions with suppliers right across Asia, for example, that wasn't possible because of AliExpress. It's a platform that allows us to connect and buy and sell right across jurisdictional boundaries. Plus also the asymmetries of information. If we look at TripAdvisor and Hotels.com and the platform models for accommodation, people are giving ratings about specific hotel rooms that the hotel chain no longer controls. So the information asymmetry is also taken away. So we think platform economics are fundamentally changing the rules and the landscape for how economic activity occurs. They're also geared towards R&D. You know, I think Amazon's arrival in Australia is significant and has not yet had its full impact compared to what we have seen in the United States and the impact it had on Walmart, which is now really investing in digital services and data as well. But it is yet to have a really big impact here. So our retail sector is in for massive change in the years ahead. Also, if we look at Amazon expenditure on R&D and the capabilities it brings to bear, you know, it spent $30.1 billion last year on R&D. Australia's total R&D budget, private and public, everything combined, is $34 billion. So with that, Amazon is able to build products like Alexa, which we have a natural language conversation with in the kitchen, to tell it we want to buy some bread and it asks us what kind. until we can get the right one. That's, 30% of your computing in the early 2020s will not be via a keyboard, it will be spoken. Siri's got no sense of humour still, but she's going to get a lot better in the years that come ahead. Distributed ledger technology, then also called blockchain, is being inserted into the area of platform economics. Why we think this one matters is because it disintermediates in ways we haven't seen before. So the internet has been revolutionary in that we could share information freely across borders anywhere with anyone, and this created all sorts of new modes of economic activity. Blockchain, I can send you money or a contract or something else of value, but there's no intermediary. We trust the system. People who have bought into Bitcoin and Litecoin, Ethereum are trusting that that system will store value, and it actually is working for that purpose with a lot of volatility. Prices are all over the place, but that's speculation on those markets. But it's still, it's overall, over the longer term, incredible growth in the prices of those currencies. But it is working as a store of value to the point where people are able to use it. The blockchain algorithms are working. That's the interesting and sort of remarkable bit behind blockchain. How does it play out into the future? Well, we're about to tackle the question of blockchain scenarios again for Australia with a 10-year, actually I think we're going to use a 5-year time frame on what blockchain does. This is a project we've signed up to do in collaboration with the Australian Computer Society. Now, I'd say these are the sorts of ranges of what's possible. There are actually 8 scenarios for the future of blockchain in there. One where trust is a key thing around blockchain. Do we trust the banks and institutions we know, or are we happy to start to trust these bizarre algorithmic solutions like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which we barely even understand, but lots of young people trusted them and put money in them increasingly, and some have done well, some have also been very burned when they came down again in value. Or do we trust our existing institutions at the other end? So trust is probably one of the key uncertainties around the blockchain world. Trust is a shift from institutions to algorithmic solutions. If you lose your Bitcoin account, that's it. There's no one you can call. It's totally, it's self-managed. When Bitcoin prices started tumbling and the US Fed Reserve tried to call someone up to get them to fix it, there was no one, because no one's in charge of it. It's a self-managing system, and that's what's different. Then the blockchain solutions may create different levels of efficiency and how much interoperability we achieve. Blockchain, to work well, requires us all to sign up to similar standards. So that's 8 different futures, if you can imagine, from not that much happening to a complete, by 2028, transformation of how transactions happen in Australia. So some people are in that top camp and say this is happening and it's very real. Others are in the another way of looking at it. But something has happened where we're losing our interest in cash as well, is an interesting thing. A lot of national governments have built cryptocurrency versions of their national currency. And we can see there the way Bitcoin prices have come up, they've leveled. The possibility is now for a more stable growth period where sort of more genuine, real applications happen, and some legislation and regulation comes along with these markets as well. Online burnout. Approximately 1 in 5 young people in Australia under 18 experience online bullying, which is much higher than before. So this is a reality for a lot of schools across Australia, is to find mechanisms for protecting children from the online world and training our kids in terms of how to handle it. And technology is going to be important as part of the arsenal to achieving those higher levels of protection. Cyber physical systems are another huge concern. The Internet of Things is us plugging everything into everything else. Washing machines are routinely being sold with Ethernet connections so that they are part of the Internet of Things. Same with lighting, for example. So all of the things that we're plugging in online become vulnerable. And I found this interesting here, where there was an attack, a cyber attack shown by researchers on certain models of car in the United States, where they successfully run a Jeep Chevrolet off a highway just via, and it's not even a fully automated vehicle, high levels of partial automation, but they were able to run it off the highway by taking it over. But the FBI then released a warning for people buying cars that has gone out everywhere. In a target vehicle at low speeds, the researchers were able to do engine shutdown, disable brakes, steering. In a target vehicle at any speed, they were able to do door locks, turn signal, tachometer, the motor rotation speed, radio heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and GPS could all be controlled. So that's a concerning sort of thought for us as all of this does get put online. We absolutely need the tools to achieve higher levels of security. Techlash, I think, is another phenomenon that is likely to increasingly play out. This was the European Commission. They fined Alphabet, which is Google, 2.42 billion euros for favouring its own shopping in searches online in Europe, which is the biggest antitrust case ever in the history of the world. I think Australian Parliament, parliaments worldwide are going to be increasingly asking the question, how do these tech corporations, tech sector giants actually benefit small businesses and people in the countries, and what kind of policies and regulatory responses do we need to make sure the benefits are actually there? And those sorts of discussions, I think, are already occurring in Australia. Plus we've had in this recent times heightened privacy awareness and the acknowledgement that we're in a different world of online manipulation, where it becomes possible that an entire election has been influenced significantly via the strategic and purposeful use of misinformation online to get people to vote a certain way is pretty confronting and challenging. But online manipulation in our time has taken a major step up into a new playing field, which requires, again, technological innovation helps here. The same sorts of tools that people who are faking news are the same ones as what we can use to control and prevent that. And their colleagues of mine in Data 61 are working on systems which improve verification and trust so that you know what you're seeing is actually what you're seeing online. Coming to the end of the talk then, if I talk about reality bites, and this is sort of the last mega trend, which is more about what it's the human experience in this future world that we're moving into. And really baristas should have been automated according to our models. A barista job is a highly rules-based, structured, repetitive job. It's probably closer to the red line one but they haven't disappeared. And I'm confident by 2038 they don't go anywhere. And that's because there's a lot more going on than just coffee, right? So you probably walk past a couple of coffee shops to get to the one you really like. Is it just caffeine? Probably for some of us, but maybe more things. Ambience, is it fair trade? Did the barista smile and talk to you? What was your full experiential factor? Electricity companies don't sell us electrons, they sell us light, heat and warmth. Qantas didn't sell me a seat on the plane, they sold me the ability to come here and talk to you. So I think increasingly we need to be thinking of that endpoint outcome that we're actually getting. And that's why I think the barista provides that human experience for someone, and because we're humans, we like a human making our coffee, and that is going to continue to happen, even though the machinery is there. And I don't want to offend any baristas in the audiences, but some of the machinery is getting really good and possibly makes a coffee better than you do. So why you stay around is because of the other things that happen around the barista, and this is where the data we're collecting on things like museums here, where we're standing today, the MCA. Your visitation rates aren't declining. People want to come to a real space, right? There's not a digital substitute for what we're doing right now. Even though you'd say a lot of the offerings are there, they're not really happening. So me and a colleague out of my team, George, we were trying to get a report off to a client in Sydney, and we were very busy and we needed to get it sent off straight away, and we were looking for a cafe with Wi-Fi, because it's Sydney, right? Every single cafe is going to have Wi-Fi. So we jumped into this one called the Greek Spot and asked the lady where the Wi-Fi is, and she politely pointed this sign to me. And we're like, we couldn't get our report off, so we started to reflect a little bit about whether or not we thought this cafe had the right digital strategy for the future. Was not having Wi-Fi the smartest? Because do they create a completely different vibe and culture in this cafe, and it gets known and everyone starts going to it because it has a different setup as opposed to the ones where everyone's glued to the smartphone. They need to be able to block 5G as well to really make this work. But it's an interesting thing for us to reflect on. I would say that the best digital technologies we create are the invisible ones that put the human at the centre. You can look up the term digital humanism, which is getting a whole lot of, it's a phrase that's being used increasingly about what the human experience is in the world of digital, and I think that's where a lot of our attention starts to focus. So thanks very much for listening to this. That was a huge amount of information about some of the things that we're looking at. Confident that the world is in for a whole lot of change due to digital, and from micro levels, for us as individuals, we've got to start to make some decisions about career and transition, but companies, governments, the whole society has to look at this and start to think about what kind of future they want through this world. Thank you very much for your time. And I think we've got some time for questions, is that right? Great, and there are roving mics, so who wants to be brave and first? Here we got one at the front.
You talked a few times about productivity being level or not going up anymore, but yet as an individual I can find my way from A to B using an app, a trip planner that has cost me nothing and has gained me a whole load of productivity in my own personal life.
Yeah.
Well, do you think the problem is that productivity is actually not representing how we live now?
So I visit the OECD every other year in Paris. There's a group of people like me doing similar things, and they were talking a lot about the productivity paradox. One of the academics in the space said, what was it, that the productivity gains of digital technology show up everywhere other than the numbers, because we've had 20 years of digital. But first of all, it's becoming clear we think there are major measurement problems of how we go about measuring productivity. Is one of the things that we say where that line is flat, we're missing things out. A lot of the digital economy, though massive, is not very well recorded in the metrics that the OECD put together. It's measuring a lot of the historic economy. Plus, we have at the same time that there is, I think, uplift for digital, because that app that you have does save you time and it's free of charge. There have been analyses on the free economic value of Google searches. Imagine if you had to go back to the old days and find all that information out. Huge amount of time. Lots of people would not be able to do their jobs or would go crazy trying to get to that same level of information. And that's all happened totally free, and there have been estimates of what that's done. That's really buoyed the economy. But at the same time, in some sectors, we've seen productivity really plummet, like mining, for example, as commodity prices have come down. Things have been taken in the other direction. So it is still one we're unravelling, but I'd say the weight of opinion is now pointing towards these digital innovations are increasing productivity. The only other explanation around the productivity paradox that is worth pointing out is that at the initial stages of digital transformation, and if the Industrial Revolution went for 100 years, if the Information Revolution is at the same time period, we're still at the beginning of it. In the beginning phase of these revolutions, we are still working out new ways of working and doing things, and that's not an easy process. We're kind of rearranging the economy to work with digital right now, and that is not yet associated with the full benefits. But I think we can look at lots of cases and examples where digital productivity digital technology enhances productivity, and I do think the evidence is mounting around not being connected to digital is going to starve your ability to grow the economy.
Do you see an acceleration of megatrends, or the number of trends? Because when I was a kid, or when I was younger, it felt like there was perhaps just one or two, or maybe even one. Like maybe, I don't know, say 10 years ago, everyone talked just about, say, mobile being the big thing. And now it feels like it's just, there's a whole bunch of them. Do you see it's like that in 15 years' time, we're going to be talking about 10, 15 megatrends?
So there is a theory of recombinant innovation, right? That innovation is not like a skyscraper where we put one bunch of ideas and then another bunch on top and another bunch. It's more like an inverted pyramid, that we have a bunch of ideas about sensory systems, machine learning, predictive analytics, informatics. We've seen all kinds of breakthroughs in these fields. This has created this level. The next level gets bigger because we've got a whole lot more ideas introduced into that. Let's say genetics increasingly the field of genetics is also expanding really quickly. Let's plug that into the next layer of innovation that happens and so forth. And quantum computing comes in, which transforms so the idea is that it's, that's why each year after feels like there's a whole lot more change as it's growing like this, not like this. So that is true. I do temper it a bit though. I mean, I've been in the field of strategy and foresight for around a decade now, and we do always say the pace of change is more than ever before. I think we should challenge ourselves a little on that one, because in all sorts of ways through human history, change has been pretty profound. Like one of my presentations, I have a picture of my grandfather and grandma in Poland in 1939, right? They found a way through that, or grandma did. Massive amount of change was about to happen through the war, but then beyond the war and the technological advancement, so I don't think it is that we have a unique time in history of change. It's a different sort of change, but I also think this concept of recombinant innovation is very real as well. Yeah.
Thanks for that. But, the government recently announced a sort of a strategy to improve digital capability for the mid-2020s. I was wondering what you thought your role of government is, both in let's say, service provision in a digital age, and as data custodian, data regulator? And is there perhaps an international model that you would say is like an exceptional example of how data can engage?
Yeah, so I think government has a huge role. There have been some views. I remember an article I read called "The End of Government?" It might have been in The Economist, saying that in this digital world, will government really matter? I think it very much does. I think as we look to the US economy in California and tech startups there, government played a huge role in the beginnings of Silicon Valley. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was investment in military R&D that then spilled over, and then some universities were built. Philanthropic money came in. So Lucy Cameron on my team has done a study into what created Silicon Valley, and government does have a role. Government also creates rules and structures within which we operate, which can't completely disappear. I mean, Uber can't operate without a road network with traffic rules, right? It didn't just fix all that. It needs someone to create the rules and the structures, but government is challenged with being fluid and fast-paced as a new technology comes on board that we have to work through. Governments are currently picking up the question of artificial intelligence, and I think that's something we need. We need to work out what AI future we want and then set about building that. And that is starting to happen around the world. The governments are picking up that question, asking what it is we want out of AI, and then what kind of regulatory and policy settings do we do to put it in place. The role of government doesn't in any way diminish in digital. It's as important as it ever has been, but it's got to keep pace as well with some really quite profound changes. Uber really caught us off guard. There's a lot more like that in the pipeline. Yeah. And then we'll go to you next. Thanks.
Thank you. These digital technologies seem to create, in theory, access for everybody. Internet, everyone could get access to everything, and yet, the more it develops, the more it kind of gets hijacked by the Google, who will take you down a path or whatever, and you've got these two things that, well, you can have a technology that gives certain theoretical possibilities, but it's the people who take hold of that, and basically someone will take control. So you've got this paradox where things are getting, in theory, by the technology says it's more available to everybody, and yet fewer and fewer people are benefiting from it at the expense of other people.
Yeah.
Do you have part of your organisation
dealing with that? We
that?
think about the sort of social equality, and equality of opportunity in a digital world features heavily in all our work. And I think it's an important one. Let me sort of explore two views on equality of opportunity in a digital economy. One is Tyler Cowen, a US academic in economics, who's written a book called The Average is Over, and argues that digital technology is going to be about concentrating wealth into fewer and fewer people. It's a pretty dystopic view. It's not, it's not ubiquitous and everywhere. It still is overall wealth growth, but he says it's concentration. Why does he come to that conclusion? Imagine if you were a musician here in Sydney in the 1800s, right? And you were limited by geography to how many bars and pubs you could play music at. So no matter how good you got at playing music, there was a limitation on where you could go. And other musicians still had plenty of market share. Today, we have YouTube, Twitter for you to advertise on, we have iTunes, we have all sorts of online tools where one musician can put their music everywhere, quickly transfer it in digital format, and everyone can be listening to it. So one musician takes this massive market share, and others everywhere. There's no more barriers, others all lose out. So he uses this as an example to say that digital can have this wealth concentration effect. Now let me give you a completely other view from a Nobel Prize winning economist, whose name I cannot remember. Joseph Stiglitz. So Joseph Stiglitz gives us the view that there is also the other aspect of digital where it takes away all the barriers. The kid living in India with no formal education, who has to charge up the iPad on the neighbour's house because they don't have electricity, and a huge number of people do this, can still jump in and participate in e-commerce. He can learn a coding language, and he can start to use that in the world of e-commerce. And one of the books on blockchain I read begins with a young girl in Afghanistan where it is illegal for females to have a bank account. But she is able to earn, she does movie reviews, and she earns Bitcoin. And this is in the early days of Bitcoin before the price spikes. And she does very well because her Bitcoins suddenly get worth a whole lot, and she's able to buy a computer, have a bank account, and become fully economically able to participate in a society where it wasn't possible for her. what a fantastic outcome in that digital has been the thing that has taken away the barriers to participation in the economy. So there is that view of digital too. It is this democratisation of innovation and anyone can play aspect to it. I think we are seeing across OECD countries a gradual rise in the Gini coefficient, which is a measure of wealth inequality. When it's 0, everyone's got the same amount. When it's 1, one person has all the money and no one else. And Australia is about 0.34. Denmark, Switzerland, Holland are all around 0.222, 0.24. US 0.39. UK is about 0.35 by memory. Mexico is 0.6. You know, and there is quite a lot of literature showing us that you don't really want a high Gini coefficient in your country. It's something, it's moving gradually up in Australia, but only gradually, really, and it does come down a bit. So it's not a huge thing. It is something we very much need to look at, about equality of opportunity in a digital economy, that people right across the country have access to digital connectivity, which means they can plug in and use the internet, and they have the skills and abilities to do that really matter, and that we look at our education system to make sure everyone's got the skills and abilities they need. I believe, you know, at my kids' school, at prep, they do coding with, they've got this thing called Bbot, which has it's a little B with a forward button, a backward button, and a left and a right, and it's put on a grid, a 5x5 grid. Teddy is put on one side, the B down here, and then there's a pile of blocks here, here, and here. You have to go forward, 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 left, right, and navigate B. That's prep, and then all the way through to year 12, they continue till when they're leaving the school. Doesn't matter what kind of career you're going into, you have coding, which I think is what should happen right across Australia. All our kids should have coding ability to be able to manipulate all this powerful artificial intelligence and play in this world that we're moving into. You know, we had to have numeracy and literacy to get a job. They've got to have that as well. So there are mechanisms that we need to be looking at to ensure inclusivity in the digital economy. It's a really big issue across all of our work. Yeah.
Thanks, Stefan. Really interesting.
Thank you.
Set of ideas. I'm interested in the way that biases get baked into sort of algorithms. You know, you had the idea of people talking now about, you know, you can have a racist algorithm or an algorithm that has, you know, a sexist algorithm because it's reflecting human biases.
Thinking of Microsoft's chatbot tool, which got closed down about 24 hours before it became misogynistic, racist, and pretty concerning. Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting. You mentioned, was it so the AlphaGo thing, AlphaZero, was it? The
AlphaGo Zero.
It wasn't almost given any. It was just like was that
self-play?
Is that free of that in the sense and I guess is something like that able to not be imbued with human biases, and how can we plan?
It's a good thought. Yeah, AlphaGo Zero it didn't have any human instruction, just the rules, and then a neural network machine learning program, which meant it figured out how to play AlphaGo. Now, it's not solving the Microsoft chatbot had much more complex tools to solve. It had to know how to interact with people online, and it unfortunately learned from us. One of the things is we want AI to be better than us, right? We want to build AI which has higher levels of ethical performance than we do, and I think that is quite feasible and possible that we can go down that path. This is why we want to start thinking about working out what is a good AI future, and then setting about building that AI future. You know, it is an incredible boon to humanity, artificial intelligence. It does so much good for us, but we're in the driver's seat too, and we want to make it go in the direction we want. So absolutely, we need to be thinking about this AI future we want, and thinking about how the coding happens to create these tools. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just actually not dissimilar to that, but extending it further.
Yeah.
When you think about diversity, a lot of the people where these algorithms begin, they come from their own cultural backgrounds and heritage. And yet one of the things that we're prioritising when we think more about human is that cultural diversity, cultural heritage, and where that begins. How do you see that moving forward? Because generally the people who are, not in all this gross generalisation, a lot of the people maybe are coming from certain privileged backgrounds, from certain demographics, from certain cultural backgrounds, and how does that diversity play out?
So probably most of the world's AI is being written by young male engineers in the sort of 21 to 25 age bracket. That's probably where most of the code is getting constructed, and I have read online some concerns that is our AI getting there headset, which may not be the only one that we want to have injected into it. So it is part of the previous question, I think, in that we should be looking at that. But I'm a believer in the positive power of what AI will do. You know, we've had too much Terminator 3 type stuff. In actual fact, there isn't sort of that sentience kind of argument is hard to really construct when you get into looking at whether that can happen. It will have a profound effect on us. It will be significant in defence. It will be significant in health, every space. But it has a prospect, I think, in almost every space of making things better, not worse, if driven in the right direction. So I think now is the time for governments and societies to really get this conversation about what is the AI future we want, and then set about making it happen. Yeah.
Hi there. I just wanted to talk about blockchain and what you said before about more you talked about the capabilities of blockchain and whatnot. I'm curious about cryptocurrency and really around your thoughts on where the role of cryptocurrency plays within, say, we'll talk about the Australian economy. And do you think that there is a space for cryptocurrency to eventually replace fiat currency?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 4 possible futures on cryptocurrency if I can in response. You know, I also will say I see huge potential for efficiency and ease of use. That when I pay you in Litecoin is 2.5 minutes till it's in your account. And that's pretty good compared to conventional payment systems, and it can happen across any jurisdictional boundary. You know, all the time. It's a pretty amazing system that's happening there. But let me give you these futures. 1, no, cryptocurrency disappears, and that future happens because people just didn't change trust, really. They didn't want to stop using the Aussie dollar, be it in digital or real form. They wanted to hold on to that. They needed a reserve bank backing it. They wanted the institutional framework. So that's one future by 2028. It's gone away. Another future is Bitcoin as one. It is the world cryptocurrency. We did see a transfer of trust, and we did find it really efficient and useful. And we all moved towards one because it's like the platform models. The bigger it got, the bigger it would get until everyone was using it everywhere. The third one is the multi-coin world, where Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, all of the others are playing a significant role. There's a couple of dozen big ones, let's say, and then a whole lot of smaller ones as well. But we are still regularly trading and using these as they are highly efficient. You know, they are allowing us to transact with certainty and efficiency that we couldn't previously do. And some of the other ones also perform much better in electricity consumption, like Litecoin, way more efficient than Bitcoin for the amount of electricity Bitcoin uses. So that could also power that world too. The fourth scenario is going to be where the fiat currencies fight back. The reserve banks around the world fight back against cryptocurrency, and they build fiat currencies with all of the same blockchain-based algorithms that the cryptocurrencies have. So there is no efficiency gain in moving towards these ones. So we continue to use fiat currencies, but they are blockchain-enabled fiat currencies that are highly efficient and take away a lot of the transactional processes in the middle, and a lot of the intermediary institutions change as well. So I think all of those 4 futures are possible for cryptocurrency.
Hello, Ian.
Yeah.
We've seen so many advances, and it's really impacts our lives really positively, and it's fantastic. But recently there have been shutdowns through Telstra, with banks closing, supermarkets, etc. And I don't know if they're malicious or not. But what happens if somebody malicious, say, wants to break into systems which actually affect our survival, such as our water systems, our electricity? What sort of protection is being built into these big mega digital age? That it
has happened and can happen again. There are different views on how bad and how much risk we face, but by the end of today, there will be an awful lot of cybercrime that is committed maliciously, and then systems fail and just stop working. But they're becoming mission critical systems, so we need them to work, right? I would say there is no unplug option already for us. There is no way that we can not rely on digital technology to do a huge number of the things you've got to do today, and a huge number of the systems you rely on. Like when I fly back to Brisbane, I rely on all the digital technology. We absolutely need to think fundamentally about cybersecurity. From some perspectives, I've heard that we're losing the war. We pour more and more resources into cybersecurity, and we have massively increased cybersecurity expenditure and technology across every country in the world. But the baddies keep on getting better. even faster, because it's a snake with many heads. You work out one problem, cut the head off, and then 6 more grow in its place. So that's the challenge of it. Some people would suggest we need to really look fundamentally for new systems that operate in a different way and are paradigmatically different from where we're at, that achieve those higher levels of security. But there's no two ways about it. The next 10 years has to see an enormous push to improve cybersecurity and deal with the online burnout megatrends, all of the negative aspects of digital. They're part of this package along with the positives. And we need the technology. There isn't an option where we can not have the technology. It just doesn't work anymore. We need to take it on and find those solutions and build the systems that deliver security, safety, and pleasantness of use. One more question. We might do this side of the room because I think we have been a bit that side of the room-ish. Anyone over here? Because we have.
I'll go while we're thinking about it.
We can do.
Thanks for your talk. It's been fantastic. Somebody over there asked a question about government, and I appreciate that you work for a semi-government or full government organisation. But could you comment on where you think the Australian government's digital strategy is? What is it doing well? What might it want to improve? And maybe also comment on where you think corporate Australia is. So if you look at the top sort of ASX 100, if you think that CSIRO is out there doing this amazing work with researching really fundamental, important digital megatrends, where are we in government and where are we in corporates, and what would your message be to both of those?
Yeah. So the World Economic Forum digital capability rankings put us, I think we fell from place 16 to place 18, but Australia still does well. However, there's a huge amount of ground for us to cover. We've got a historically mining and agriculture-driven economy that will still be part of it, but we need to transition into a new space. Here we are as an advanced service sector economy. Here's China, our biggest trading partner, jumping into the space of advanced service sector economy. We've got to make this jump to an advanced service sector economy to continue growing. Overall, I feel like we're going too slow. It's hard to sort of say there is no proper international comparison to Australia really in terms, because there's no Australia out there that's identical. But I feel like we need to be moving faster and putting skin in the game. I think the Australian ASX 250 has underinvested in digital technology and will be vulnerable to Amazon, which hasn't. Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, so the world's largest corporations now in market capitalisation are spending between 15 to 30% of their revenue on R&D. That R&D is building very advanced equipment, machinery, data science capabilities that are going to be brought to bear in our marketplace. So for our industry to be able to operate, it needs to do that, and we've invested way less in building up those underlying digital capabilities. So that is something that applies to artificial intelligence as well. To stay competitive, we have to have all these skills and capabilities, and I think that is a vulnerability for us, is that we haven't put enough in the pipeline for deep R&D capability. The objectives around the education system, we need to look at and understand what digital does to the workforce, and then start to make sure the training, the aptitudes and skills of our young people, but it's actually it's the whole lifelong learning thing as well, is well responding to the needs of a digital economy. And we're doing okay, but we can look at pockets of the Australian workforce, data science. We run the 457 visa program because we can't get enough people filling digital jobs with like certain types of coding and data science, but we want to be able to draw them increasingly from within Australia if we could. So we want the education system to be putting people into it that can do these jobs, because they're well paid and there's going to be growing demand for them as well. So that's another space where I think we need to do more of. We need to get skin in the game in the space of digital. We can't stand and watch this happen. It won't work. Any last questions? No one from this side of the room wanted to jump in, because you guys didn't answer any questions. So I convinced you all. It'd be great to have a question from someone young. No? Too shy? All right, that's all right. All right, look, thanks very much, everyone, for listening. Or we do have one more from... Yep.
Do you think that you can build in ethical decision-making into machines, so artificial intelligence, I'll leave it at that. I'd like you to expand.
Yes, absolutely, I think we can, and I think the machines can be more ethical than humans have been. With the case of a judge making a verdict on a legal case, initially you'd say, no, we could never do a robot might be more ethical and follow more laws more precisely. In the space of military applications of AI, hugely complicated, but I've read the literature on the ethics there, and it's not all one-sided. Some people will argue that humans have not always demonstrated themselves to be ethical and decent in the battlefield either, that a piece of AI just does its job according to rules. It doesn't overstep or understep. It doesn't have hate, fear, anger, or create those errors. It just does what needs to be done, quite possibly with much lower collateral damage as well. So long as we're controlling it well and it's got the right rules and instructions that it's following, there is a prospect here of using AI to actually decrease net harm, to actually take us into a world where things are done better. So absolutely, I think we can create ethical rules that AI has higher levels of performance than human beings. In so many spaces we haven't been that good. AI has a chance to improve upon that. Not in sort of a radical way, but more of a, I don't get into any of the Terminator 3 type stuff on AI, more of a sort of applications of AI that are more mainstream than that. Yeah. Thank you. Right, I think that's all. Thank you very much for your time.